that's me. Hi, everyone. My name is Pashi. Jumped a little bit. I am originally from Cyprus. I've been living in New York for the last 6 years or so, and I've been working for Similarweb during that time. I think good to give a little bit of an introduction of who is Similarweb, what do we do, and what I'll go through will be a report that we recently published around AI visibility and the winning brands within each industry, and what are the learnings that we get out of it. So Similarweb is a data provider. We collect digital data. We effectively track everything that happens online. We track users around the globe. We've been doing this for years, so we have a lot of data. And that allows us to see in real time all the changes and the shifting energies that are happening, especially with AI. Because of our data inputs, we're able to see and track how users within LLMs are behaving. What are the real prompts? What are they actually seeing within these LLMs? What are the responses? Do they click into another website, so referral traffic? What is the general sentiment that these LLMs will provide for each brand? And these are all relevant points for the success of a brand in this new AI era. So what we'll do is we'll look at AI around the globe in general. This has been something that we've been tracking throughout the time. It's very volatile. Everything is still changing. And so we will continue looking at the overall changes. So what have we been looking? We're looking at adoption overall, and the growth of adoption of LLMs is still growing. 2025 was like the big growth year, but we're seeing that it's still happening in 2026. And we're also seeing that the biggest growth is happening within the app downloads. That is a bit more of a sticky platform. Users are embedding it a bit more onto the overall digital behavior. And you can see that their growth is 3x year over year in comparison to the previous year. So 2025 was sort of the testing ground on the desktop, maybe mobile web, but now users are actually downloading these apps to use them every day. What we're seeing is that ChatGPT, as we know, is the biggest one. It's now the 5th largest website around the globe. It's competing with Amazon. It's very, very big. It kind of dominates everything. However, we'll look at that however in a moment, the consolidation is starting to shift. So yes, ChatGPT is around capturing 70% of the users because that's what everyone was introduced with. There was a lot of good PR around it. But as users are starting to get a little bit more savvy, they're starting to understand the pros and cons of each platform and getting different use cases out of every different LLM platform. So the shakers is Gemini and Claude, and we're seeing their growth being exponentially growing. So watch this space, basically. So in 2025, referred traffic from LLMs was a big deal. It was growing very, very quickly. What we were also seeing was that AI referred traffic into e-commerce websites was higher converting than, let's say, a Google search. So very high conversion rate from LLMs with fast growth in 2025. In 2026, we're seeing that referral traffic is now stabilizing. So the click-through rate from an LLM into a website is not growing across the industries as we used to see it. But what we are seeing is because there's more adoption and users are going into these LLMs more and more, visibility is still growing, and being visible in these LLMs is now the important thing to be doing. There are some caveats. Being visible is important. How many times you're visible is important. You're mentioned is important. And what is the overall sentiment? So are these brands framed positively, neutrally, or negatively is also going to be very important. And yes, because of adoption and because of the change of uses, we're seeing that it's now becoming part of the customer journey. So Google is still important, but these LLMs are also becoming very important for product discovery. OK, so we did this report where we look at different industries and we track the winners in AI visibility. because we have real users, what we're able to do is say, we're going to take a look at finance. We want to look at topics around banking, credit cards, insurance, etc. And based on those topics, we then generate all the prompts, because that's what users asked, or the responses, or the brands that I mentioned. So we're not making up prompts or what we think users are putting in. We're putting an umbrella theme, and then based on that theme, or the prompts come through based on what the users put in. So I'm going to go through some of the winners. The general message here is for every industry, there's a different winners and a different place, like sort of landscape. It's not the same across the board. So when we look at retail, finance, or travel, the landscape is completely different about what happens in these platforms. But once we look at those, we're also going to look at what are some learnings that we can capture from each industry that we can maybe use for the brands that you work with. Okay. We will, of course, send you the report after this. I won't spend too much time. But when we look at finance, as we said, what we're seeing is traditional banks are generally ahead. These neobanks are not ahead. The neobanks tend to be more digitally savvy, but we're seeing that for banking, brands with sort of history and brand awareness and brand reputation are sort of leading the pack. And Chase there is #1 in the US. For travel, we're seeing a bit more of a mix between OTAs and flights and hotels. There's a bit of a moving industry, and there's a good mix. So it's a little bit more competitive than other industries. In electronics, it's just Apple with a very big difference. Obviously, the brand here is having a massive effect, but we're seeing some new players coming in. We'll get some more insights on this in a moment. When we look at beauty, between skincare, for example, and makeup, we're seeing that skincare dominates. This also is very much aligned with users who are looking to find very specific learnings as to what skincare routine based that in a way that's personalized. So it really makes sense that skincare is top of mind versus makeup, for example. Sports brands dominate in fashion. I think we're a little bit of a parallel here with Apple, where legacy brands have the upper foot, the upper leg. And for news and publishers, this is a bit of a mixed bag. I think there's still time to see where everything lands. There are a few complications here, and it's a little bit difficult to see who's winning what, but Reuters at the moment is at the top. And here is a summary, if you're interested, of all the big brands that are winning in their specific industries. Okay, so let's see what we can learn from these different winners and what insights can we deduct. So functional beats aspirational. So when we're looking at fashion, we're looking at a lot of like the selling marketing fluff doesn't really fly. It needs to be a little bit more practical, it needs to be content rich, and it needs to be unique. So the overall strategy and branding and marketing is not really relevant here as much as it was in other areas. Transparency trumps fluff. Brands like The Ordinary and Stripe, who are hyper-specific, also respond to the user prompts and being useful to the user in an advice kind of content. Brand strength counts. We saw that with Apple. We saw that with Chase. For some industries, brand strength still is very important. And niche authority pays off. And this is something that we see with NetWallet and B&H. They sell electronics. Although they're not as big as Apple, they have their niche lanes that have content on quite extensively on their websites. And so this comes up and allows them to have some growth. We'll show some trends coming up in a moment. Okay, so we saw a static view, a summary, but there is a lot of change over time. So within the finance industry, Chase is still growing, but we're seeing NerdWallet also coming up with their visibility. So it is still an evolving market. And even though there are big players and big brand strength, the smaller players can still build the content and come in and gain visibility. In electronics, we are noticing that there is a seasonality. We're noticing that given this seasonality, it gives opportunity for B&H and Best Buy to grow their visibility at times where consumer demand is high. So seasonality will also be something to consider when building your strategy and when to put your levers on and off based on the demand. It's a little bit distorted, but okay. Leaders are more stable. That's the overall trend that we see, but it's still an open playing field. Seasonality will bring more volatility. Volatility varies per industry, so you need to adjust your strategies accordingly. And early visibility doesn't guarantee everything. So I think overall the playing field is still open for everyone to influence visibility within these LLMs. A couple more insights. Overachievers over-index on authority, not brand. So iFixit, for example, is a free and open repair manual platform. And because it has content that directly speaks to people's needs, it's doing very well and over-indexes in authority. No particular brand presence, I don't know them, but they're coming up. So answer-shaped content, we also see this within social media content, where answer-shaped educational content works best, and that's a very good strategy for LLMs. Community trusted, that's why Reddit is such an influential cited website, because building communities and peer-to-peer reviews really influence these LLMs, and that will have a very positive effect on your visibility. And then niche, hyper-specific. Prompts are not like Google searches, where it might be a sentence or a keyword. It's going to be a paragraph, and so being hyper-specific with your content will give you the niche in the same way that users prompt and ask questions as well. Okay, so just to bring it all together, the discovery journey is increasing. It's getting more fragmented. We had search. Then we have ChatGPT. ChatGPT is losing its authority or diminishing. There are more LLM platforms coming in, so everything is sort of being opened up even more. Referred traffic is steady, not growing anymore, so visibility is very important because that's continuing to grow. And search is evolving. How you think about search will now be a little bit different. It needs to be holistic rather than fragmented to reflect how the consumer journey now happens. So brands, if you're a big brand, play to that strength. If you have good brand awareness and it's positive, lean into it. It works. Community counts. If you don't have a community building strategy, that would be a good call for brands to do. Content is king. We knew that for a very long time. The type of content here is more relevant, but that's the shift in content strategy that needs to come in. And no resting, everything is volatile. A few basics, the technicals, the partnerships, the content, being able to identify the cited websites is going to be key on how you come up in your AI visibility, and of course, all the other technical elements that were important still stand. I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to come here. So when we at Similarweb think about AI visibility, these are some of the key metrics and data inputs that we provide brands and agencies in how to think about it. So real user prompts to understand what people are looking for. Am I coming up in those responses? Is the brand being mentioned? If it is being mentioned, is it positive, neutral, or negative? And then if I'm not being mentioned and I want to be mentioned, what are the cited websites that I need to influence? Or do I need to create my own content on my own media to have an influence on the responses. And that's it. Thank you very much.